Hello, BookTube. One of the signature BookTube events of the month of August is, of course, unfortunately, GarbAugust, created, need it be said, by Ollie at Criminale. A month-long event designed to celebrate the reading of trash. And the videos are starting to trickle in. Our last named co-host, It Came From the Page, did a hilarious grumpy GarbAugust video today, because when you descend into the ranks of garbage literature, you don't know what you're going to find. Some garbage literature is far more enjoyable than others. Some garbage literature is not exactly an innocent reading pleasure. And again, there are readers out there, perhaps Jordan Parsons is one of them, who are saying, why would any garbage reading be good? The initiate, no. But as It Came From the Page just recently learned, some garbage literature is actually just horrible. You have to pick and choose carefully, and you run the risk at any minute of having your precious, precious reading time wasted. And I have been reading a lot of garbage in the last day. I've been ransacking my shelves, first of all, for print books, for paper and ink books. I know there's a lot of garbage online. I've talked a lot about how the self-publishing industry has come into its own since the advent of ebooks, and it makes a lot of people a very good living. And because you're not expecting to need an agent to figure out how to place this in bookstores, you've got a greater latitude for writing garbage than you would ordinarily tend to have. And so it's felt natural to go to my print books first. I will still get a lot of ebook garbage read in the month of August. But I've been going to my print books in the last couple of days, and I have to confess, I had other plans for GarbAugust. I planned on just reading a mountain of garbage just willy-nilly. But my eyes have been drawn to one particular kind of book. I don't know why that is, but we've mentioned, I've done one video on certain possible indicators that what you're reading is trash. There's lots of other meta discussion to be done on the subject. But one element that has come up is the book derivative? In other words, is the writer writing about something that the writer did not create, and therefore working under strictures that have nothing to do with the call of the author's creativity, or lack thereof? And I've been looking at my shelves, I've noticed pastiche fiction, in other words. Is pastiche fiction, does it have one foot on the banana peel of garbage anyway? Because the writer is explicitly barred from using the full breadth of their creativity. I've been wondering about that, and I have been looking at my shelves, and my eyes have been drawn more than I was expecting to Conan pastiche novels. Now, I don't want to upset any of my GarbAugust co-hosts, and I don't want to upset any of you purists out there. I will only faintly allude to the fact that there's a case to be made that Robert E. Howard's Conan is trash. That the original Conan, the Corpus Sanctorum, is trash. There's a case to be made, I think a pretty good case. But if there's a case to be made that the original corpus of Conan works is trash, then what can we say about the spin-offs, about the pastiche novels? I've been revisiting them. I've read 2 so far, even just in August, and there are a ton more to go. I don't know. I hadn't planned on making GarbAugust a month of Conan, and I don't really want to do that. There's a lot of other garbage out there, but I did reread a book. This is by L. Sprague de Camp. Goes back a long way with Robert E. Howard's Sacred Corpus, and this is Conan and the Spider God. Would you have a cover credit here? You have Conan, of course, with his felt boots and his thews, and you have a chained maiden, and you have a gigantic monster. I don't know if this tells me who did the cover. The cover is so good that they should get credit. The illustrations on the inside, I'm told, are done by Tim Kirk. Illustrated by Tim Kirk, but no mention of whether or not Tim Kirk did the cover. This is from 1980, and it is a Conan pastiche novel in which Conan is 24 years old. So he's been having adventures for 10 years. That sounds really young, but he started really young. And as this novel opens, he is in the Turanian Royal Guard. He is in the nation of Turan, and he is in one of their greatest cities, Agrapur. And he has risen through the ranks. He's decided at this period in his life to have a little stability, a regular pay, a little bit of respectability, not so much a freebooter and a thief. This is a few years after he was, for instance, the thief who broke into the Tower of the Elephant. And he has risen, because he's a giant and he has the aforementioned thews, he has risen to the rank of one of the captains in the Turanian Guard. So he's not just a grunt. He has authority over other men, writes out reports, one assumes, although does Conan know how to write? And if so, where did he learn? But the nights get long in Agrapur, and I want to read you a little passage here from the beginning of this book, where Conan has received a message from a woman named Narkia. She is alluring, and she is also the bespoken property of one of his senior captains, in other words, a colleague of his, who outranks him. But Conan received an invitation from her for after-hours hanky-panky, and Conan doesn't turn those invitations down. So he goes to her room. I want to read you a little of Elsbreg de Camp's deathless prose. The candle vanished, and the window creaked open. The giant eeled through and slid to his feet. He stared hungrily at the Turanian woman who stood before him. Her black hair cascaded down her supple shoulders, while the glow of the candle, now resting on the taboret beside her, revealed her splendid body through her diaphanous gown of amethyst silk. "Well, here I am," rumbled Conan. Narkia's feline eyes sparkled with amusement as they rested on the man who towered over her in a cheap woolen tunic and patched, baggy pantaloons. So, you automatically wonder, well, what does a captain of the Turanian Guard make that Conan's pants are patchy? And Conan is wearing pantaloons. That's an image I bet didn't spring right to mind when you heard his name. "I have awaited your coming, Conan," she replied, moving forward with welcoming arms outstretched. "Though, in sooth, I did not expect to find you looking like a stable hand. Where are your splendid cream and scarlet uniform and silver-spurred boots?" "I didn't think it sensible to wear them tonight," he said abruptly, lifting his baldric over his head and laying his sword carelessly on the carpet. Beneath his square-cut black mane, deep-set blue eyes under heavy black brows burned in a scarred and swarthy face. Although he was only in his early 20s, the vicissitudes of a wild, hard life has stamped him with the harsh appearance of maturity. With the lithe motion of a tiger, Conan glided forward, gathering the wench in his brawny arms, and wheeled her towards the bed. But Narkia resisted, pushing her palms against his massive chest. "Stay," she breathed. "You barbarians are too impulsive. First, we needs must cultivate our acquaintance. Sit on yonder stool and have a sip of wine." "My thanks, girl," he muttered, setting the empty vessel down on... "If I must," grumbled Conan, speaking Hyrcanian with a barbarous accent. Unwillingly he sat, and in 3 gulps drained the proffered goblet of golden fluid. "My thanks, girl," he muttered, setting the empty vessel down on the little table. Narkia chuckled. "Really, Captain Conan, you are a bore. A fine vintage from Iranistan should be sipped and savored slowly, but you pour it down like bitter beer. Will you never become civilized?" "I doubt it," grunted Conan. So he has muttered, rumbled, and now grunted. "I doubt it," grunted Conan. "What I have seen of your so-called civilization in the last few years has not filled me with any great love of it." "Then why stay here in Turin? You could return to your barbarous homeland, wherever that may be." With a wry grin, Conan clasped his massive hands behind his shaggy head and leaned back against the tapestried wall. Never let a noun go without an adjective. "Why do I stay?" he shrugged. "I suppose because there's more gold to be gathered here, one way or another. Also more things to see and do. Life in a Cimmerian village grows dull after a while. The same old round, day after day, save for petty quarrels with other villagers, and now and then a feud with a neighboring clan. Now, here, what's that?" Booted feet tramped upon the stair, and in an instant the door burst open. In the black opening stood Senior Captain Orcan, jaw sagging with astonishment beneath his spired, turban-wound helmet. And we're given, very helpfully, a picture of what that helmet looks like. Orcan was a tall, hawk-featured man, less massive than Conan, but strong and lithe. That's another lithe for the books. Although the first gray hairs had begun to sprout in his close-cut dark beard. As he studied the tableau, and recognition replaced astonishment, Orcan's face reddened with rising wrath. "So," he grated, "when the cat's away." His hand went to the hilt of his scimitar. The instant the door swung open, Nargia had thrown herself back on the bed. As Orcan spoke, she cried, "Rape!" This savage burst in, threatening to kill. In confusion, Conan glanced from one to the other before his brain caught up with the whirl of events and grew clear. So Orcan gets it right away, and Nargia understands right away, but Conan is just sitting there staring. As Orcan's sword sang from its sheath, the Cimmerian sprang to his feet, snatched up the stool on which he had been sitting, and hurled it at his assailant. The missile struck the Turanian in the belly, sending him staggering back. Meanwhile, Conan drove for his own sword, lying in its scabbard on the floor. By the time Orcan had recovered, Conan was up and armed. Why doesn't he throw the stool at Orcan's head? No idea. Heat of the moment. I often miss in exactly these circumstances. "Thank Ehrlich you've come, my lord," gasped Nargia, huddling back on the bed. "He would have..." But they interrupt her. As she spoke, Conan met a whirlwind attack by Orcan, who bored in, striking forehand, backhand, overhand in rapid succession. My bucket a quarterstaff. Conan grimly parried each vicious cut. The blades clashed, clanged, and ground together, striking sparks. The swordplay was all cut and parry, since the curved Turanian saber was ill-adapted for thrusting. Pretty much the only thing in the room that's ill-adapted for thrusting. "Stop it, you fool!" roared Conan. "The woman lies! I came at her invitation, and we've done naught!" But he gets interrupted too. Nargia screamed something that Conan failed to comprehend, for as Orcan pressed his attack, red battle rage surged up in Conan's veins. He struck harder and faster until Orcan, skilled swordsman though he was, fell back breathing heavily. Then Conan's sword, flashing past Orcan's guard, sheared through the links of the Turanian's mesh mail vest and sliced into his side. Orcan staggered, dropping his weapon and pressing a hand against his wound while blood seeped out between his fingers. Conan followed the first telling blow with a slash that bit deeply into Orcan's neck. The Turanian fell heavily, shuddered, and lay still, while dark stains spread across the carpet on which he sprawled. "You've slain him!" shrieked Nargia. "Turgle will have your head for that." That's the head of the city. "Why could you not have stunned him with the flat of your blade?" "When you're fighting for your life," grunted Conan. So he's back to grunting. He started roaring for a minute there, but he's now back to grunting. Grunted Conan, wiping and sheathing his blade. "You cannot measure out your strokes with the nicety of an apothecary compounding a potion. It's as much your fault as mine. Why did you accuse me of rape, girl?" Nargia shrugged. With a trace of mischievous smile, she said, "Because I knew not which of you would win. Had I not accused you, and he slew you, he'd have killed me for good measure." "That's civilization for you," sneered Conan. Before lifting his baldric to slide it over his head, he whirled and slapped Nargia on the haunch with a scabbarded blade, bowing her over in an untidy heap. She shrank back, eyes big with fear. "If you were not a woman," he growled, "it would go hard with you. I warn you to give me an hour ere you cry the alarm. If you do not... ... Scowling, he drew a finger across his throat and backed to the window. His pantaloons. An instant later, he was swarming down the ivy, while Nargia's curses floated after him on the moonlit air. That is page 2 of Conan and the Spider God, and it gives you a really good sense of what's coming in the ensuing pages. There are all sorts of plot twists. Eilsberg de Camp doesn't let more than 2 chapters go by without a plot twist, and there are some good visuals. You would expect in a book like this that the visual reveal, the big climactic moment where Conan encounters the Spider God itself, would be the most arresting thing in the book. But there's a better scene. There's a scene where he's in an underground cavern and he sees the way out in the distance. He sees an aperture through which he can see the night sky. And it looks to him in the dim light of the cavern like there are some fungal growths, big fungal growths along the floor. And he figures, I'll slide down and I'll just pick my way through them. But as he gets closer, he realizes to his horror that they are giant spiders who don't know yet that he's there. We're told, again, Elsbreg de Camp knows the Conan mythos backwards and forwards. We're told that each of these spiders is much bigger. They're much smaller than the spider god, but they're much bigger than the giant spider that Conan faces in the Tower of the Elephant. The classic story where the thing that keeps the treasure at the top of the tower, in addition to a bunch of lions, is a giant spider. A giant spider, it's about the size of a yellow lab. These spiders are much bigger, and there are many of them. And that scene is well done. That scene is genuinely creepy. But the scene that I just read you, the deathless prose that I just read you, raises a really good question. Actually, Nargia got it in one. She might be a wench and a girl, but she got it in one, which is why did Conan kill this man? Why did he do it when a moment's conversation would have revealed that there was nothing wrong, that it was a mistake, that the girl was lying? That's all. Orcan would not have killed her in front of Conan. He would probably just have stopped giving her his business, so to speak. Conan had his foe incapacitated and decided, in obviously never mind this red mist of blood rage, he's trading quips about pounding out a serum at an apothecary shop a second later. He's not gripped in a killing rage, but he kills the guy anyway, which sets off the action of the whole novel. But which is, it will make you pause. It made me pause. I read this when it first came out back in 1980, and I read it again for GarbAugust. And that opening scene, I mean, if your opening scene of your novel is making you scratch your head, not only because I think we can agree that prose was not very good. And again, I have a sentiment here that I want to just float out into the ether. I know that it's going to upset Conan aficionados, one of whom is a co-host of mine. So I won't harp on it. I will just float into the ether that as bad as that prose was, it wasn't as bad as the prose of Robert E. Howard. Now the scimitar is really flashing. I'll just float it out. I'm not even going to claim that. I'm just going to float out the possibility. But if you hit a scene like that at the beginning of a book, I mean, I plowed on because I'm a sucker for Conan pastiche novels. But if you hit a scene like that where Conan kills a man for no reason whatsoever, and the writer of the book just decides, if I lean on an easy cliche, you'll go along with it. Well, again, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to start imposing Einstein's grand unified theory of everything on trashy literature. But that's a garbage move, right? For the author to just throw in 16 contrivances and hope that one of them hits the spider god right in the face. that is it starts off the book right away. Conan has a position. He clearly knows this man. They have worked together. It is obviously an easily provable misunderstanding, and Conan has the mastery in that little room. Orcan would have survived the first wound. There was no reason for Conan to kill him, except that Conan has to be on the run. He has to be a wanted man. He has to spur the action. Because otherwise, what would the action be? Conan giving performance evaluations every Wednesday at the Turanian Guard? That wouldn't make for a very good novel now, would it? Was this a very good novel? Well, not really, no. It had its moments. And this is, back in the early 1980s, Bantam did this thing where they numbered their Conan pastiche novels. This is number 5. I believe I have all of them. Some of them have even better cover art than this. I will definitely take this as a cover art. But that is the state of my GarbAugust at the moment. I will be moving on to more garbage tonight and tomorrow. So you can expect more progress reports, and perhaps, if you're deserving, or maybe not deserving, more dramatic readings. Thank you, BookTube.